The silence from Washington right now is louder than any bomb. This isn't a trade dispute. This isn't a diplomatic spat. What we are witnessing is a divorce. A divorce with billions at stake, with economies, supply chains, and alliances as the assets being fought over. And like every divorce, this one is about who gets the house, who gets the kids, and who gets destroyed when the lawyers walk out. Donald Trump just made the single worst calculation of his political life. He looked north. He saw a friendly neighbor. He saw a country that apologizes if you step on its foot. He saw 40 million people spread across a frozen expanse who supposedly need America more than America needs them. He was wrong. Dead wrong. And right now in Ottawa, Mark Carney is proving it in a way no Canadian leader has ever dared. Carney is not fighting. He is not retaliating. And he is not angry. He is quietly rooting the foundation of America's industrial and security supremacy out from under its feet. And when he is done, the United States will be smaller, not just economically, not just geopolitically, but permanently. Let me show you the papers on his desk. On the night of February 16th, just after 2 a.m. Eastern, Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing 25% tariffs on everything crossing the Canadian border. Oil, lumber, cars, aluminum, uranium, every major commodity, every strategic material. His advisors were stunned, not by the aggression, because Trump is always aggressive, but by the sheer stupidity of the move. The goal was simple: panic. Crash the Canadian dollar, force bank runs, make Carney beg for a meeting at Mar-a-Lago by lunchtime. That is the Trump playbook. Create chaos, then sell the solution. Extract concessions from people too disoriented to negotiate. It has worked 100 times before. On companies, on individuals, on smaller countries. But Trump forgot one thing. Canada is not smaller. Canada is not the kind of target you can intimidate by threatening a tariff. At 8 a.m., Carney walked to a podium in Ottawa. No teleprompter, no notes, no anger. He didn't even mention the tariffs. Instead, he said 7 words that immediately rewired the global economy. We are activating the Strategic Resource Protocol. The room went silent. Reporters looked at each other. Protocol? Canada doesn't have protocols like this. Canada has politeness, hockey, and universal health care. They were wrong. Carney announced that Canada was immediately redirecting its critical mineral exports, lithium, cobalt, uranium, rare earth elements, away from United States supply chains and into interlocked, exclusive 10-year contracts with the European Union and Japan. He didn't fight the tariff. He didn't retaliate. He didn't call Trump names. He simply made the tariff irrelevant. Think about the geometry of that move. Trump threw a rock. Carney dropped a mountain, not on Trump himself, on the supply chains that Trump's donors actually rely on. And here's the part that is keeping Wall Street awake tonight. Carney had this ready. He's been sitting on this weapon since January, watching Trump, letting him believe he was in control. Trump finally crossed a line he didn't even know existed. And now the floor has dropped out from under the White House. Receipt number 1, the markets. Look at the opening bell today. Ford, GM, Tesla, Apple. They didn't dip. They tumbled. Algorithms reacted before humans did. Within seconds of Carney's announcement, quantitative trading models recalculated every assumption about North American manufacturing. And the results were catastrophic. Why? Because Canada isn't just a nice neighbor. Canada is the supply closet for American industry. The United States doesn't manufacture anything without Canadian components. Cars cross the border 7 times before final assembly. The electricity grids are physically integrated. You can't power Detroit without Ontario. Defense contractors source their most sensitive materials from Canadian mines. When Carney announced that these critical minerals were being prioritized for reliable partners, code for not the United States, the algorithms instantly calculated the replacement cost. If American companies have to source battery metals from China or the Democratic Republic of Congo instead of Canada, costs rise 30 to 40%, not because of tariffs, but because of logistics, reliability, ethical certification, and shipping lanes passing through pirate zones. The market realized what Trump hasn't realized in 4 years. You need Canada more than Canada needs you. That asymmetry breaks the American mind. Receipt number 2, the Port of Vancouver. Satellite imagery, shipping manifests, commercial aerial photos. They all tell the same story. The Port of Vancouver, which normally sends a massive flow of goods south by rail and truck into Washington state, is redirecting containers in real time. Ships flagged for potential U.S. compextile U.S. and delivery are held for national security review. Trains that usually head to Seattle are rerouted to the Port of Prince Rupert, which ships directly to Asia. This isn't a blockade. Blockades are acts of war. This is bureaucratic jujitsu. Carney is using the exact same national security language Trump uses, but to pause shipments legally, quietly, and precisely. Every container that doesn't cross the border today is a container that won't appear on American shelves next month. Every ship diverted to Asia is a supply chain relationship permanently rewritten. Receipt number 3, the phone call. Sources inside the State Department are leaking. Career officials are terrified. Political appointees are panicking. Nobody knows what to do because nobody saw this coming. At 9:30 a.m., the U.S. Commerce Secretary made a frantic call to Ottawa. The question was simple: does this mineral redirection include defense contractors? The answer from Ottawa? 7 words. We are currently reviewing all export permits. Diplomatics speak for, we'll get back to you when we feel like it. Do you understand the power dynamic shift in that sentence? Usually, it's the United States making the threats and Canada checking the fine print. Usually, the phone calls flow from anxious Canadian ministers to condescending American officials. Today, the White House is sweating on the line, waiting for an operator to pick up, checking watches, calculating how many hours of production remain before supply chains seize. Lockheed Martin builds components requiring Canadian minerals. General Dynamics builds vehicles that need Canadian aluminum. The F-35 program, the most expensive weapons system in history, requires Canadian materials for critical subsystems. If those materials don't cross the border, production slows. If production slows, delivery dates slip. If delivery dates slip, contracts are renegotiated. And if contracts are renegotiated, the entire U.S. defense industrial base starts scrambling for alternative suppliers who don't answer the phone at 9:30 a.m. because they are in a different time zone, alliance system, or geopolitical reality. This is how empires decline, not with a bang, but with a phone call that never gets returned. Receipt number 4, the joint statement. While Trump was posting furious messages about ungrateful Canada and unfair subsidies, a joint statement quietly emerged from Brussels and Ottawa. The President of the European Commission and Mark Carney signed a framework integrating Canada's resource grid with Europe's industrial base. Read that again. Canada's resources, Europe's factories, America's competitors. The framework includes joint research and development, shared infrastructure investment, streamlined customs between Canadian ports and European hubs, worker mobility, and technology transfer. Every bureaucratic detail that makes economies work. Carney didn't draft this plan this morning. He's been keeping it under wraps since taking office, waiting for Trump to make a mistake big enough to justify deploying it. And Trump did. Carney pulled the trigger. The bridge is burning. Now look at Trump's spiral. The frequency of his posts, the capitalization, the exclamation points. It's panic masquerading as aggression. He assumes leverage is about size. That because the U.S. economy is 10 times larger than Canada's, he automatically wins. That numbers on a spreadsheet decide the outcome. That is 1980s real estate thinking, not modern geopolitics. In today's world, leverage isn't size, it's choke points. It's about who controls the narrow passages that everything else must flow through. It's about who owns resources that cannot be substituted. It's about who can afford to wait. Trump handed Carney both the moral high ground and the economic trigger by threatening a 25% tariff. He violated the USMCA agreement, broke the rules, and expected a predictable, petty retaliation. Instead, Carney attacked the choke point. He didn't tax American goods. He redirected Canadian resources to a domain where Canada has the advantage and the United States is exposed. Trump reacts, Carney acts strategically. Trump wakes up, watches cable news, gets angry, issues orders. assumes panic. Carney is calm. He understands global capital flows. He understands risk, alliances, supply chains. He is playing the long game, exploiting systemic gaps that Trump cannot even see. He's using Trump's aggression as the justification for a strategic realignment Canadians have dreamed about for decades, but never dared to attempt. Trump thought he was punishing a subordinate. Instead, he threw a wrench into his own engine. The engine is smoking. He doesn't know how to fix it. He fired the mechanics. He drove away the experts. He surrounded himself with people who tell him he's winning. Europeans are laughing. Canadians are standing tall. Japanese contracts are being signed. And the American voter is about to wonder why their grocery bill just went up again. The brilliance of Carney's strategy is asymmetric. In symmetric warfare, tariff for tariff is losing when the opponent is 10 times bigger. Carney's approach is different. Trump taxes Canadian steel. Carney starves U.S. technology sectors of lithium, cobalt, uranium, and rare earth elements. Canada has the resources the world needs for batteries, electronics, nuclear power, and defense systems. The U.S. is desperate for these resources to compete with China. By locking them away in exclusive contracts with Europe and Japan, Carney hits Trump where it hurts most: industrial production, swing state jobs, and supply chains. And he does it quietly. Trump uses caps lock. Carney uses contracts. Trump holds rallies. Carney holds briefings with charts. Trump threatens. Carney redirects plumbing. Trump's aggression validates Carney's independence campaign. He positions Canada not as America's little brother, but as a reliable, sovereign partner. Europe, Japan, the UK, they see stability and order. They do business. The United States sees chaos and uncertainty. The leaked memo confirms it. At 1:10 p.m. last night, a secure video call connected Ottawa, London, Berlin, Paris, and Tokyo. Carney's chief of staff, UK Chancellor, German economics minister, senior trade officials from France and Japan discussed what happens after the break. According to sources, the timeline is precise: 7 days to finalize the critical minerals framework, 14 days to sign first bilateral contracts, 30 days to begin shipments to European ports. Nobody asked about the United States. Nobody mentioned tariffs. By the end of that call, the U.S. had been factored out of the equation. 7 days until the framework is finalized, 14 until contracts are signed, 30 until the first shipments leave Canadian ports bound for Europe instead of America. 7 days. Count them. Why does this matter to you? If you live in Ohio, Texas, Toronto, Calgary, or Vancouver, pay attention. For Americans, the era of cheap, easy access to Canadian resources is over. Trump ended it, not through strategy, but through incompetence. Prices are going up. Lumber comes from British Columbia and Quebec, 30% of U.S. softwood supply. If redirected, home prices rise, construction slows, renovations cost more. Oil 4 million barrels a day cross the border. If redirected, gasoline, heating oil, and jet fuel spike. Potash, essential for agriculture, comes 60% from Saskatchewan. Divert it to Brazil or India, and crop yields decline. Food prices rise. Inflation returns, driven not by policy or spending, but by supply shocks. For 70 years, the U.S. and Canada have been a single security zone. NORAD, intelligence sharing, military integration. If Carney can cut economic ties, redirect resources, how far could this go? Hard borders, customs inspections, military patrols. A special relationship once considered unbreakable now hangs by a thread. For Canada, this is a moment of truth. Stand on your own or remain a vassal state. If Carney fails, the European contracts fail, the Canadian economy suffers, and Carney becomes the most hated man in Canadian history. If he succeeds, Canada emerges as a sovereign middle power, integrated with Europe and Asia, a resource superpower for the 21st century. Globally, the North American fortress is cracking. Investors see it. Generals see it. Adversaries see it. Break USS. Canada trust, and you break the foundation of Western security. During the press conference, a reporter asked, Mr. Devent, Prime Minister, aren't you afraid of provoking the president? What if he closes the border completely? Carney removed his glasses, looked directly at the camera, and said quietly, "The border is a line on a map. The economy is a web of trust. The president can close the line, but he has already broken the trust. We are simply moving on." He walked away. Not a threat, a goodbye. What happens next? Scenario A, fragile calm. Trump rages, announces minor sanctions, bans snowbirds, gets petty. Markets force his hand. Tariffs quietly removed. Canada keeps its new contracts. Supply chains remain rerouted. America gets a symbolic victory, permanent loss. Scenario B, catastrophic escalation. Trump declares a national emergency, seizes Canadian assets, inspects every truck. Border gridlocks, auto plants in Michigan shut down. Layoffs, unemployment spike, foreclosures begin. Carney freezes USS. Tech assets in Canada. Full-blown economic Cold War. Investors flee. The dollar weakens. The global economy stumbles. Beijing watches and smiles. Scenario C, strategic reset. Trump fires a scapegoat, blames the deep state, pivots to China or Mexico. Carney negotiates from strength. Reaffirm USMCA, guarantees of no future tariff threats, compensation, critical minerals access as equals. Tariffs removed. European contracts remain. Supply to U.S. partially maintained. Crisis passes. Problem with Scenario C, you can't unring the bell. Trust is broken. Contracts aren't undone. Shipping lanes don't revert. Canada's orientation east and west doesn't reverse. It compounds. It becomes the new normal. The United States has lost something it cannot reclaim, the unquestioning loyalty of its northern neighbor. Countdown, 7 days until the European framework is finalized. 7 days until the rules of North American engagement are rewritten forever.